Welcome back at 621. For most people, those who know about it, the mention of Chowchilla, California immediately brings to mind a sensational crime. In 1976, a school bus full of children disappeared without a trace, along with its driver.
It became the largest kidnap for ransom in U.S. history. Fox News senior correspondent Claudia Cowan gets deep into the crime and the controversy surrounding it in a new podcast called Nightmare in Chowchilla. Here's an excerpt.
It was the largest kidnapping for ransom in U.S. history.
No other clues to what increasingly looks like the most bizarre crime in recent memory.
It was like somebody come down from Mars and just took them up off the planet.
I remember thinking, I'm gonna die in here.
In July 1976, 26 school children and their bus driver were kidnapped in broad daylight in the farming town of Chowchilla, California, and buried alive.
There's been no word from any abductors. And that has led to a wild series of rumors about the motives behind the crime.
Larry Park and Mike Marshall were just 6 and 14 at the time.
And then you hear the dirt and rock hitting it on top of trailers. Oh, we're being buried alive.
The screaming to this day is burned into the audio files of my memory.
Now, 45 years later, they come together for an emotional reunion.
It's only because of you that I am here to tell this story.
I appreciate that.
Claudia joins us now. And Claudia, you know, this happened 45 years ago, so there are a lot of people who are watching us right now who weren't even born, you know, and may not know anything about, if not the most infamous, one of the most infamous kidnapping cases in U.S. history.
It's true, and that's why 45 years later, we felt that this story really needed to be revisited through a long-form podcast. It's a 6-part podcast looking at the legacy of this horrific crime, reminding people exactly what happened. You know, these kids weren't just buried alive in a moving van in a rock quarry. They had been driven around in vans after being stolen, essentially, off the school bus with their bus driver. And they had been driven around in that van for nearly 12 hours, 2 vans. So, you know, people may remember they were buried alive, but the journey actually started when they were taken off this school bus. It was almost the end of their summer school session. They were, many of them had been swimming and were still in their wet bathing suits. They were all ordered to come off the bus, get into these vans. We're seeing pictures now. They were driven around for hours in a windowless van, you know, no bathroom breaks, nothing like that, no fresh air. And then they were ordered to climb down a ladder, as you see, into this buried moving van, and it was just horrendous. And so we wanted to talk to the people who survived this ordeal. How they got out is incredible. And what happened to the kidnappers, of course. And we talk about all of this on this podcast launching on Saturday, which is Ed Ray Day. That is in honor of Ed Ray, who was the bus driver and who stood by these kids all this time and is hailed as a hero in Chowchilla.
It is just amazing that they survived, a true miracle. In speaking with these survivors, something like this, you don't just go through it and move on. You're mentally, emotionally, and physically impacted for the rest of your life.
It's so true. Imagine being buried alive. We're talking about 5, 6, 7-year-old kids. It's everyone's worst nightmare. And it happened to these 26 kids and their school bus driver. And so the impact of this trauma has lasted these past 45 or so years. You know, many say they still can't be in the dark. They need a nightlight on all night. They're afraid of being in enclosed small spaces. They're claustrophobic. Some of these survivors of this horrific crime, you know, became substance abuse victims and are still dealing with PTSD all these years later. It wasn't very well understood back then, but it is better understood now, and they're finding coping mechanisms where they can. son, Mike Marshall, who you saw in that clip, has a support animal that is with him all the time. And he still lives with his mother, as a matter of fact. So all kinds of trauma. We talk again about this in the podcast as well. Very, very interesting to hear from the people who were there and survived all these years later.
Scary and fascinating, and certainly we'll be looking forward to that. And by the way, Claudia, it's so great to see you after working in Sacramento so many years ago together.
That's right, Tony. And my first job in television news was there at KTTV. That was my very first job in news. I was a part-time messenger way back in the mid-'80s. And to all the interns and entry-level job holders there at KTTV, I applaud you. I support you. Stick with it.
Well, it's great to see you. And by the way, Nightmare in Chowchilla, the school bus kidnapping podcast, is going to be available beginning Saturday, and you can download it at foxnewspodcast.com.
She brings up a good point, though. In the 70s, even 80s, people didn't really know how to deal with PTSD or mental, things that happen to you mentally. So, wow, those people, I mean, they just
still experiencing it
all
these decades later.